Hello. Pursuant to the provisions of sections 58 and 59 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended, our National Assembly obtained from the Presidency, worked and passed the Finance Bill 2021, which sought in the main to support the implementation of the 2022 budget by proposing key reforms to specific taxation, customs, excise, fiscal, and other federal laws. The bill provided for enhanced domestic revenue mobilization efforts to increase tax and non-tax revenues and ensure tax administration and legislative drafting reforms, particularly in support of the ongoing automation of reforms by the Federal Inland Revenue Services. Joining me on our guest segment in our ICAN on Air program today, and of course to throw and delve deeper insights towards us gaining an understanding of key changes in the Finance Bill 2021, is one of our crown jewels in this specialized field. I refer, of course, to Taiwo Oyedele Esquire, the fiscal policy partner and West African tax lead at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Mr. Taiwo Oyedele is also the chairman of the COVID-19 Intervention Committee for PwC West Africa. We shall be unveiling more on this, our erudite guest, shortly. And also on this program, we are going to be availing you, our listeners and our participants, information about adverts. Please take your pen, take your paper, take notes of the notes and the emails that is going to be flashed across. And then we'll have a potpourri of our diary that has passed and perhaps that are still very current in terms of sound bites that we are going to be sharing with you. Please want to stay tuned. I shall soon be back with you with our guests. You're welcome back. Join me as I welcome our guests, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, apparently for the second time on ICAN on Air. You are most welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be back.
Super. No, Taiwo, I wanted us to just clarify something, a small issue, the technical thin line issue concerning the Financial Bill 2021, Financial Act 2021. I've seen in different forum, perhaps including fora outside Nigeria, when they want to refer to this 2021 bill, they say it's an act. I wanted you to just very clarify that for the benefit of people who may not be tax experts, not be lawyers, not be accountants who are here to understand what exactly we are looking at.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think lawyers and accountants also need that clarification. so the so the way the finance bills and acts have been named in terms of the years have been a little bit confusing, I have to admit. So the this is the third in the series. So in 2019, we had the 2019 Finance Bill. So it's a bill until it's been enacted into law, i.e., passed by the National Assembly and signed by the President. That's when it becomes an act.
Right.
Based on the Interpretation Act, Authentication Act, it requires that the date of the bill should be the year in which it was signed. So the Finance Bill of 2019, government started working on it in 2019, but it was signed by the president in 2020, but they kept the name of 2019. So it became officially 2019 Finance Act. And they needed to sustain that. So when they did the one for 2020, so the 2020 Finance Bill also became 2020 Finance Act, even though it was in respect of 2021 fiscal year. So the current one is the 2021 Finance Bill. In fact, as we speak now, yesterday, the House of Rep had a public hearing. Today, the Senate had their own public hearing. So this bill is currently being debated. So it is not yet an act, and therefore the right thing is to refer to it as the Finance Bill 2021.
Excellent clarification. Thanks for putting that out there. And so we start shooting. Now, this Finance Bill 2021, like you rightly hinted there, is the third in the series following the Acts of 2019, the Acts of 2020. What is your overall assessment of the impacts on the tax system and the economy in general?
Yeah, so many of us in the tax practice, we have been clamoring for changes to the tax law for so many years. So when this eventually happened in 2019, we were all very excited. And we're also very happy that it has been sustained, at least for now, the third year running. So the implication, I think overall, has been very positive, both in terms of the tax system, but as well as the economy as a whole. And if I just look at a few areas, so if you think about ease of paying taxes, so we've had provisions such as the one allowing taxpayers to exchange information with the tax authority online, even including emails. So that may sound like something very trivial, but in terms of the burden of compliance, that is significant. So I don't have to get into traffic and spend 4 hours just to go and drop a letter. I can now send via email. We also have provisions allowing the tax appeal tribunal to do virtual hearings. So you don't have to physically go to another state or another city to have dispute resolution, discuss and address with respect to tax matters. So this has been possible. In terms of higher revenue, you will remember that in the 2019 Finance Act, the VAT rate was increased to 7.5%, and some exemptions were provided. So this has resulted in VAT, for example, as of last year, became the number one tax yielding revenue head in Nigeria, displacing companies' income tax and even Petroleum Profit Tax Act. So to that, a large extent, we have seen some movement and impact for revenue generation. We have seen government trying to protect small businesses. We had the exemption for small businesses for VAT and CIT if their turnover was not more than 25 million, and even minimum wage was exempted from personal income tax last year. We have seen issues around equity and fairness, especially to do with the insurance sector, as well as elimination of excess dividend tax. This is the way that government make the company pay tax over and over again. Even when they had paid the taxes declaring their dividend, they have to pay another tax again. And it has also allowed government to respond to emergency issues like COVID-19, where government reduced the minimum tax rate from 0.5% to 0.2%. And we've seen introduction of new instruments in the capital market, like security lending. We have seen a tax regime for real estate investment trust, and we've seen changes to procurement law and fiscal responsibility. Overall, I think it's been very good for the tax system and the economy.
Thank you very much for those insights. And delving a bit further, I know you actually talked about the 7.5 VAT, but it's been widely reported really that the new finance bill really yet to be an act. I'm sure it's going to be an act in the next few days. A la ICAN, saying that, I'm very sure, that the new finance bill makes it mandatory for individuals to have TIN to operate bank account. And also reported that the bill seeks to impose 7.5% VAT on online transactions, including social media. What's your take on this?
Yeah, this is a very good question. I think it's another area where we have to clarify. So there's nothing in that bill that says that individuals must obtain and present their TIN in order to be able to open a bank account or for a company. And there's nothing that says that 7.5% VAT should be imposed on social media and all of those things. So, but it's also important to say that those things have been there before. So in the 2019 Finance Act, there was a provision for TIN, for anybody who wants to operate a bank account as a company and any individual doing business. So if you're an individual and all you do is you're an employee and you collect your salaries and you are very happy with it, or maybe you are even a student, or maybe you are a pensioner, if you are not doing business as an individual, you can open a bank account without TIN. But if you're doing business, and it makes sense, if you're doing business, we need to know and capture you within the tax net. So that has been enacted in 2019. It has not been repealed, so there's no need reenacting it the second time. So in this new bill, there's nothing like that there. And for the VAT at 7.5%, again, this was introduced in 2019. Along with the significant economic presence that require non-residents to register for VAT and charge VAT. But you would imagine that it's not easy to implement a tax law that will compel a foreign company to do something in your country. What if they don't do it? What are you going to do to them? It has taken a bit of time, but I think government now is at a point where they're getting the cooperation of these mega companies, multinationals, to comply. So what people are saying is there is that 7.5%. So people are interpreting those messages to mean that this is a new introduction in the bill. It has always been there for at least 2 years.
Thank you very much for that clarification. In fact, a lot of online media keeps on happening and social commentators on economic affairs, keep on just happening on that. I'm so happy that you have been able to clarify this with us. Not a new bill has been in the Act, still extant for 2021. It passed into law. Now, also in the lead up to the 2022 budget preparation, the National Assembly, as other stakeholders, such as the World Bank, has advocated to what is described as sin tax, sin in quotes, sin, S-I-N, sin taxes. And they advocated for sin taxes such as excise duty on non-alcoholic beverages, plastics, and an increase in existing excise duties on tobacco and alcohol.
Hmm.
Are these issues covered in this current finance bill that might be passed into law very soon?
Yeah, thank you very much. We know that Nigeria needs tax revenue because government has been borrowing, and it's a source of concern for many Nigerians. So it's understandable when you see those initiatives of let's raise more taxes, let's correct, all of those let's generate more taxes. So the like you rightly said, the National Assembly, I think it was when the Controller General of Customs was trying to defend the budget of the agency, and this issue came up again, and the DG said, I want you guys to allow me impose excise duties on sweetened non-alcoholic beverages. Um, and then the National Assembly assured him that they were going to do it. So I think the executive thought, well, if they're going to do it, why don't we just ensure that it's done properly? And then you have the likes of the World Bank saying that Nigeria can generate so much money from excise on tobacco. There's already excise on tobacco, but they say, why don't you increase it? Why don't you increase the excise on alcohol? Why don't you reintroduce the excise on, carbonated drink, non-alcoholic beverages? In fact, they also even recommended excise duty on plastic, and they also said even on vehicles that use fossil fuel. All of this you can put together and call them sin taxes. Sin in the sense that they are considered to be taxes that are to discourage you from doing what government does not want you to do, or that is not good for your health, or is not good for the environment. So on one hand, those stories, we can understand, but we need to always be mindful that the likes of the World Bank, they deal with all manners of countries around the world. They have their analysis, they have their global templates. So when they recommend to you, you have to make sure that you contextualize it to your own circumstances. So let me just speak to the example of excise duty on non-alcoholic beverages or sweetened drinks. So the concept is that in many countries where government provide free healthcare, if you then develop a lifestyle or a habit that exposes you disproportionately in terms of your exposure to health issues, then every single time you fall ill, the state will take care of you. I mean, the government. Now, government will say, well, since you seem to be spending more from this our money on your healthcare, we should ask you to pay a little bit more. So government will then increase your excise duty, and it makes sense. But in Nigeria, here, government is not providing free healthcare. So imagine government now tax me because I'm consuming too much sugar. They collect the money from me. When I have health problem, I still have to take care of myself with my family and friends if they care enough to take care of me. That in principle looks like double taxation. So, in fact, the World Health Organization has a prescription. Sugar is not bad. Actually, if you don't take sugar at all, it's also a problem. So, it's just not to have too much of it. The World Health Organization prescribe, what the limit should be for consumption of sugar per day, and Nigeria is actually below that level. So, many people will say, does Nigeria have a sugar problem or a carbohydrate problem? So, in a way, we have to be very mindful before introducing any taxes or increasing the rate. And we need to consider our local context. Is it the right thing to do at this time? Do we have data and evidence to support what we want to do? What would the impact be? For example, you may think about beer and say, oh, beer is for people who have money. Poor people don't consume beer. But you have to think about even the inputs. You have Baileys, which is coming from the farm. You have, distributors and suppliers. You have employees. When they finish producing the beer, you have the entertainment sector that will receive it as a major recipient. And those are sectors that government needs to support because, they affect so many people. They provide support to many households. So my overall view is that this is not the right time to start increasing or raising new taxes. But it's not in the bill. Like, if I may answer your question, but it's not meant to be in the bill because it's not a new law. Whenever government wants to change the rate of excise, it's just through fiscal policy instruments. So the finance minister will do it, get the FEC approval, and then it will be gazetted. So we hope that government will take the input of the industry and stakeholders into account in making the final decision.
Excellent point. As a matter of fact, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina mentioned this at our AAC conference, trying to make sure we compare likes with likes, especially when they say that Nigerian taxation is far below the sub-Saharan IMF, and which you have just imputed here. Now, I must say that the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, our foremost institute, knowledge, understanding, and in-depth analysis, that we are aware that Nigeria has declined to sign the global agreement on the taxation of the digital economy under the pillars 1 and 2 frameworks. And one of the reasons for refusal is that Nigeria is likely to benefit more from this, let me call it unilateral action that form the global agreement, really. Form the global agreement. What are your thoughts about this? And is there anything in the finance bill to this effect?
Yes, there's nothing in the finance bill directly, but I can also say there are some provisions there indirectly, and I'll try and explain. So you're right. Nigeria's representative at the inclusive framework. So the inclusive framework is, the expanded body of OECD, G20, and some other countries, including Nigeria, who normally will not be part of the OECD. Coming together, I think we have about 140 countries, including Nigeria. So Mr. Gonjibola, I'll credit him. He has done a very good job of making sure that Nigeria makes the best decision for our country, because if we don't look after ourselves, who will? So this Pillar 1, Pillar 2, especially for Pillar 1, is looking at the biggest of multinationals who are very profitable. And based on the analysis, globally, there will be around 100 companies that will even fall into that bracket of companies that will, put some money down and will share it. FRS view is that out of 100 companies, only about 6 of them have anything to do with Nigeria on a scale that will make any impact. Now, one of the conditions for signing up to this global treaty is that you must unwind every unilateral action that you have introduced. You cannot be sharing from the global pot and be doing your own thing by the side. If they allow that, then every country will do it, and then those multinationals will be almost find it impossible to operate. So Nigeria's analysis is that we don't think that we'll make money from this. It does not make sense for us to join a treaty that is meant to increase our tax revenue, only to go and sign in a way that the tax revenue will be coming down. And it also requires that Nigeria would agree to a mandatory arbitration, which means if there's a dispute on those kind of tax matters, Nigeria cannot make a determination by itself. It has to submit to an international jurisdiction for those things to be made. Those are some of the reasons why Nigeria has not signed. I think from the explanation so far that I've received from the FRS, from Nigeria's representative, I do agree with them that we are not in a position to sign as of yet. So the provisions we have in the finance bill to try and address that include the fact that for the digital, companies, the like of these multinationals, without naming any names that you already know, government is saying now, even apart from the VAT that they're going to charge the people, we want to be able to charge you company income tax. And this finance bill empowers the FRS to estimate a percentage of the income of those companies and ask them to pay CIT in Nigeria. So to that extent, I'll say yes, that we have some provisions in the finance bill to address this global issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oyedele. You've been talking about some of these changes, but in specifics, I know there are 21 key changes. I think you've mentioned quite a number of getting here. Maybe by way of looking at a summary, what are these key changes? Can we enumerate them? And what makes them different from what we had before and going forward?
Yes, we can. So the fact is that the changes in the finance bill of 2021 are actually more than 21. I only just summarized the most important ones, and I wanted to do 21 because it's 2021. So I kept it to 21.
I
Yeah, so
understand.
I think the key changes include, for example, government says, as of today, if you sell shares in the stock market or even a private company, you don't pay anything. Capital gains is 0%. You don't pay, it's exempted from CGT. I think FRS is saying that they've seen arrangements where people just come to Nigeria, they set up a company, they operate it, from $1 million, the value of the company goes to $100 million. And then you just sell it and you just carry your bag and go. You say, this is not fair now. Be paying us something too. Um, so what this law has done now is to try and introduce a 5% CGT rate for the sale of shares. Because they don't want to punish every investor, they've set a threshold of 500 million naira. So if the shares we are selling is less than 500 million, you don't pay any tax. If it's more than 500 million, then you have to pay a tax. The good thing about that is nobody will come and protest on the street. They'll say, okay, do you mean that the shares you have is even worth 500 million?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so that's one of the provisions we have. The other one is that we have a provision in the finance bill that is trying to make SMEs. I don't know. That's not really a very good one because currently what we have is SMEs are exempted from CIT if their turnover
Yeah.
does not exceed 25 million. But this provision is now saying that, because you're exempted from CIT, we need you to calculate your capital allowance and would assume that you've claimed all the capital allowances. Now, it seems to me that that's like a punishment because you may have a small business and you may not even be making profit. If you're not making profit, you won't even pay CIT, but you still have your capital allowance for the future when you start making profit. Now, if you force me to utilize it or you deem it utilized, I think it's a way of punishing me as a small business. And this is one of the things where our members need to help their clients. If you
Mhm.
have a small company that is your client, you need to help them do the simulation of whether it makes sense. If this law passes, I'm hoping that it will be modified such that you may even get to a point where you say, you know what, thanks, but no thanks. I don't want the exemption anymore. I want to pay my tax because I have calculated and concluded that it's better for me to pay the tax and keep my capital allowance than to be exempted and then lose the capital allowance. So that's another amendment that has come through. There's also another one that says the finance minister, with respect to the year 2015 to 2019, can decide what happens to stamp duties that have been collected, including the electronic money transfer levy that was introduced about last year or 2 years ago. And then the minister will decide what to do with it. And I said, no, I'm not sure this is really a good thing because if you look at Section 163 of the Constitution, it's very clear that stamp duties is a revenue that belongs to the state. When it's
Right.
collected by the state should keep it. When
Mhm.
it's collected by the federal government should take cost of collection and share everything to the state, not to keep anything. So, but federal government is looking for a way to pay out of it, which I really think it's not really it's not nice. It's not in line with the principle of fiscal federalism to respect what we have in the law. So these are some of the other provisions, and if you allow me, I can continue. I don't know how much time we have.
Yes,
But
I know. Yes, time will always be a friend, and But I like to give you more time. But there's something that you said. So for the SMEs, is come see come sir. They are
hmm,
not necessarily to be excited about anything of concern, and that it is our responsibility as professional advisors to advise them properly. There is another change that we have in that finance bill to deal with the FIRS as the sole tax agency of the federal government. Uh,
hmm.
that aspect of change, can you throw more light on this and what would it mean for the tax system generally?
Yes. So we one of the biggest problems with the tax system in Nigeria is multiplicity of taxes. The second biggest problem is multiplicity of agencies. So you
Hmm.
have, even at the federal government level, you have FRS, you have Customs Service, you have NIPOS is insisting that they have to collect stamp duties. instead of doing postal services. You have,
Yeah.
Nasima, you have, NCC, you have even NNPC, right? DPR, before they were disbanded, were collecting royalty. They were under the, Petroleum Industry Act. They now said the commission should be collecting royalty. I don't understand how we do this in Nigeria. So we have a long list of different agencies. In fact, sometimes EFCC will do tax audit. RAMFAC will do tax audit. Even National Assembly will do tax audit. Now, if you think about it, this is the biggest confusion for a country that needs all the tax revenue we can get. It has been established all over the world. There's a principle or a theory that is called, the Laffer curve. So the Laffer curve talks about, what is the relationship between tax rates and the revenue that government will generate. And that theory concludes that the higher the tax rate, the higher you keep increasing it, you get to an optimum level. And if you increase taxes even more, the revenue you collect will start coming down. You need to bear in mind that in Nigeria, the tax rate we are dealing with is not just the rate in the tax laws. We also have to deal with informal taxes that we pay to non-state actors. We also have to deal with, they said, I think it was Premium Times that said Agberos in Lagos collected 123 billion naira a year. That amount is more than the IGR of any other state in Nigeria apart from Lagos State. On top of that, we pay implicit taxes, or what we call tax equivalents. This is when you take your money to do what government should be doing for you normally, like trying to provide security in the estate where you live, trying to fix the road to your house or your factory. You're trying to, even many of us, we are taking care of extended family and neighbors and friends because there's no free education, no health care for them. If you consider all of this and then you put on top of it that we have all manners of agencies trying to collect tax, you can never have more than 6% tax to GDP ratio. It's almost impossible because it's like a self-inflicted problem. So what this finance bill is trying to do is to bring the common sense back into how we manage the tax system. And by the way, even the Section 8, I think it's Section 8 of the FRS Establishment Act, already has something that says the FRS should coordinate, oversee, and manage, revenue of the federal government and the government of the federation. But the way these things work is you just go and lobby. If you're very close to one senator or one honorable, you lobby them. Before you know it, there's a bill. Before you know it, there's another bill.
Yeah.
We said there are so many earmark taxes in Nigeria: tertiary education tax, information technology tax. There's the one that we discovered recently, NASEN, engineering and technology
Yes.
tax. There's also the one that they passed about 2 years ago about police tax. The National Assembly just passed one recently about tertiary healthcare trust fund levy. So you can't continue. If anybody is adding up these percentages that companies have to cough out, maybe it's already even more than 100%, assuming everybody is complying. So what this provision is trying to do is, can we come back to our senses? If you think about different countries around the world, even in Africa, in Ghana, there is called Ghana Revenue Authority. It has everything, including the custom under it. In South Africa, is the South African Revenue Authority. SARS has everything, including customs. You go to Kenya, it's Kenya Revenue Authority. They have everything, including customs. If you go to the UK, you have HMRC, right? You have the IRS in the US. There must be a reason why every country is trying to focus on one administration for taxes, because it helps you to avoid, people gaming the system. I can import goods today and I'll under declare, so I pay small import duties. And when I want to file returns for CIT, I will over declare it so I can get deduction. And government will not know because they are disconnected and disjointed. So we need to harmonize how we collect taxes. We need to harmonize the taxes we collect. And we need to ensure that there's efficiency in the process. Cost of collection in Nigeria is very high. Sometimes you see people getting 7% cost of collection. Globally, the benchmark is maximum of 1%. And there's a study that says the higher the cost of collection, the higher the indication that that system is complicated and the higher the cost of compliance. So the ratio between cost of collection by government So cost of compliance by taxpayers sometimes is ratio 1 to 10 or 15. So in Nigeria, it might easily be ratio 1 to 15. So if it's costing government about 5% to collect the tax from us, it's costing many of us about 75% to comply. Almost the amount of the taxes you need to pay, you are incurring it in cost, in time, in headache, and confusion in the system.
Excellent point. Looking again at these major changes in the finance bill, we have really mentioned a couple of ones, and I'm sure there's still some other salient ones. While I am allowing you to calibrate on that, I know that government's borrowing has been mostly, on the rise due to low revenue base. And so we expect that some provisions in this bill, which is one of the major change one expects, will be directed towards revenue generation. So there is a provision in this bill, one of the changes there, seeking to expand the scope of government borrowing despite the recent increase in government borrowing. Should Nigerians be worried?
Yes, there's a provision in the finance bill on borrowing. So this is what it is. So currently, the Fiscal Responsibility Act says that government at all levels can only borrow for two things. One, they can borrow for capital expenditure. Number two, they can borrow for human development. And it defines capital expenditure to mean any asset that will last more than 1 year. You know the way accounts, I think maybe they copied it from ICAN or accounting standard. So
They always
accountants will
do.
define capital expenditure as anything that lasts more than 1 year. So that's what they have in the law, which for me I disagree with. I think for a country, you should not be defining capital expenditure as something that lasts for more than 1 year, because I can just go and be buying iPad and laptop and generators, and I'll tell you those are capital expenditure, and I'll ask you to clap for me for spending money for Nigeria on capital expenditure, right? As a
Right.
country, our capital expenditure should be defined to be expenditure that is self-financing, expenditure that will produce more value to the economy than the cost of the borrowing itself, and expenditures that will benefit our tomorrow. Whenever you borrow, what you're actually doing is you are spending tomorrow's money today, right?
Right.
With the hope
Present
of
value.
leaving that money to pay back later.
Right.
Debt in itself is not bad. But then if you must spend tomorrow's money today, make sure that tomorrow will benefit from it. Otherwise, if you spend the money on frivolities, wasteful spending, budget padding, then there will be no way to finance the debts, and you put the burden on the future generation and our unborn children. So that's not a good thing. Now, what this finance bill is trying to do is saying that in addition to capital expenditure, in addition to human development, you can now also borrow for what they call critical reforms of significant national impact. Can you beat that? I always say that whenever you use very big grammar, is the attempt to confuse people. Life is not supposed to be that complicated. If, if you are not confusing people, just see this in simple math. What does it even mean? Critical reforms of significant national impact. Can I borrow now as government to go and share it in the village for them to buy food, for them to go to school and send their kids? Can I share in the village and say it's for healthcare? Whether it gets to the villagers is a different thing. So I think that I'm concerned as a Nigerian that we are not taking very, very decisive and critical step that we need to address our debt issue. Even though our debt is not at a crisis level, if you look at debt to GDP ratio, but if you look at the debt service cost to revenue ratio, we're already at an alarming rate. At the federal government level, I
Right.
think it's close now to about 70% or even more. You don't want to get to a point where your entire revenue is to service debt, which means you have to borrow to pay salaries of civil servants, you have to borrow for defense, for everything, including any capital expenditure. So Nigeria needs to, redefine, what we can borrow for. And my view, is that our borrowing should be limited to capital expenditure, which will be redefined differently as self-financing, viable and value-adding projects. And number two, human development should be limited only to education and healthcare. And number three, this critical reform for significant national impact, I think we should just take it out completely and focus on things that will not increase the debt for Nigeria.
Excellent point. For those who might just be joining us, been guesting Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, Tax List West Africa, and we've been looking at the major changes in the Finance Bill 2021. We have looked at quite a number of changes, perception, actuality, and some of these changes that he has mentioned. And I'd like to just ask you, Mr. Oyedele, are there any other significant major changes in this bill that we're expecting to pass into law, from your estimation, in terms of putting it and saying for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, your view about some additional changes that this bill is encompassing?
Yes. So I think, like I said, there's so many important changes in the finance bill that we can look at. One of it is, what I mentioned the other time about government now giving FRS the power to assess multinational companies who are into the digital economy space, into CIT. So government can now do CIT on their turnover. In addition to the fact that those companies are beginning to cooperate with government to charge VAT. So on one hand, the point I want to make here is, like every time I want to make this point, I remember Donald Trump. So Donald Trump, at the time he was president, he said, I'm imposing taxes on China. He was telling the American people, I'm imposing taxes on China. China must pay tax. Meanwhile, he was only imposing import duties on import from China. The reality is, it is not China that will pay it. It is Americans that will pay it. But politicians, they have their way of trying to, confuse people and then model up issues. So when we say we are taxing these global digital companies, we have to be careful whether that is additional burden to our people, many of whom are just struggling and barely surviving. So the VAT, many people on this call would have seen the messages from, Facebook, I got my own from LinkedIn, from Instagram, all telling us that from now on, if you are doing a promo on your social media page, we will charge you 7.5%. So the question is, those taxes that those companies will charge will be borne by Nigerians. And I think it's okay, because if you do the advert with a Nigerian company or a Nigerian media station, you charge VAT anyway. Why should you be treated differently because you're doing it with a foreign company? So it's understandable, even though it will have some impact. Now, when you also say that those companies must pay CIT, right? What they're going to do is to do their calculations. If they think that, it's no longer going to be profitable for them, they will increase their costs. And when they increase their costs, it will still land on the head and shoulder and neck of Nigerians, including small businesses. A lot of these small businesses that we have today, no thanks to COVID, because COVID has even made it even more difficult to do physical business. A lot of businesses are online, and the way they promote their products and services is, they go online and run promos, and they have to pay in dollars. Dollar is even expensive now to find. So everybody has to now brace up for an additional 7.5%. And if we are not very lucky, because those companies have to pay CIT, even the cost before they add 7.5% VAT is also likely to go up. I think this is a major one. The other one is, because of the Petroleum Industry Act, government realizes that in CETA, we have a provision that says if you export products out of Nigeria and you bring the proceeds back to Nigeria through government-approved channel, you'll be exempted from paying CIT on that income. Now, you will remember now that under the PIA, even upstream companies will now be paying CIT. They will fall under CETA as well, in addition to their
Wow.
hydrocarbon tax. If you don't do an
Wow.
amendment, what will happen is an upstream company will say, even me, all the crude oil I've exported it, so I'm exempted from paying tax. So government is trying to amend the provision of the law to say that this exemption for export proceed being exempted from tax will not apply to upstream petroleum company. It will not apply to midstream. It will not apply to downstream. I
Super.
think I tend to disagree with government in terms of downstream in particular. Why do you want to not allow downstream to enjoy the exemption? Because they were enjoying it before. They've always been under CETA. For example, we also argue that the petroleum sector in Nigeria itself is not even diversified. So if I start producing lubricants in Nigeria today, and I satisfy the market so we don't have to import, and I begin to export maybe under the African Continental Free Trade Area to other countries, why should government not encourage me? I'm helping government to earn foreign exchange, which can help us stabilize the naira, and maybe for the value of naira would even appreciate. And when
Right.
naira is stable or the value appreciates, actually inflation in Nigeria will come down because we're
Super.
significantly import
Super.
dependent. So these are some of the
Super.
other key
Thank
changes
you.
in
Thank
the
you
in the
very
bill.
much. You've just talked about 21, and at my last count, I'm counting about 22, 23. Are there any other major change that has come? Well, for us accountants, what are the key issues and implications for accountants, especially those in practice, members who are tax practitioners? And do you have any advice for government, especially the National Assembly, on this bill, if passed into law, and for the executive arms of government for implementation? Just 2 minutes.
Yes, yes. I think that accountants have a very important role to play in the economy. I think sometimes we don't value our role enough as accountants, because accountants are one, they're there supporting businesses, whether they're small businesses, medium size, or large firms. So accountants are the reason why businesses can do well and be sustainable in the short, medium to long term.
Hmm.
Accountants also work in government, so they are part of policy making all the way from, national assembly. We have our members in national assembly. We have our members who are governors. So they are involved in policy making. They are involved in legislation. They are involved in administration. So many of the tax authorities and revenue agencies have, accountants. So on
Super.
top of that, we are agents. We help taxpayers to understand and comply with their obligation, thereby helping government to generate revenue that is needed for the economy. So this is a very important role. I think even accountants themselves don't understand and appreciate their role, and unfortunately, government does not. Not. So I think
And
on the back
yeah,
of
yeah, go ahead.
that, the first thing I want to emphasize is the need for accountants to understand this finance bill. So the first thing is knowledge.
Exactly.
Our knowledge should not be the one that everybody is speaking on the streets, on social
Mm-hmm.
media, on newspapers. Many of them, as we have said today, are misreporting done by even the mainstream media organizations. So,
Super.
as
Super.
practitioners and accountants, you have to read the finance bill yourself. Number two, you have to participate. So there is a public hearing. Do you have anything to say? Do you have platforms and organizations and associations that you can use to send your input to government? And number three is you need to do impact assessment. What does it mean for you? Even many of us also run our own small businesses or small practices. In addition to that, what does it mean for your clients if you're into practice? If you are working for a company, what does it mean for your organization as the accountant in that organization?
Ah,
So I
Mr.
think
Mr.
your
Oyedele,
value.
unfortunately, time is not a friend. Questions about
Mm.
multiplicity of taxes, the role, and I can assure you from what I know and from where I patch that the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria making a lot of inroads to educate our members. This is one of the platform, and raising the bar, our new ICAN. moving on to the next direction. Your final word before I say bye to you? Just
I
1
think
minute.
my final word is just to commend ICANN for this initiative and also for everyone who has joined, because at the end of the day, the biggest thing that you need is knowledge. More important than you have knowledge, everything else will come. I think we should keep doing what we're doing, get better, participate, and also not give up about Nigeria, because it is the only country that many of us, majority of us, including myself, can truly call home. So we have to all make it work.
That's your penultimate view, and I'm going to be asking for a part 2 because more and more questions are going to be coming, and I'm very sure when we call on you, you are going to heed us. Thank you very much, Mr. Oyedele. And for our viewers, thanks for all your comments. More of these comments are going to be covered because Mr. Taiwo Oyedele is going to be back very shortly so that we can take more of some of these changes that we are talking about and the views that you've raised. Please stay on. We'll be back with you shortly.
Time is running out, and everyone needs to step up and make the changes we wish to see around us in the interest of all citizens. So I'd like to thank all professional companies in Nigeria for the work we're doing to improve the outcomes for all citizens. Because I do believe that the companies can change the world, and I would encourage all of us to speak truth to power and never shy away from our public duty to do so. That is what makes our profession unique. It's a global profession bound by a code of ethics for all professional accountants everywhere in the world, all 3 million plus professional accountants. That's what we stand for, and that's why we are relevant and our voice is getting heard in society. I do hope that in the years to come, our children and grandchildren will be proud of what we have done as professional accountants to make the world safer, to make it fairer, and to make it more equitable. And finally, I do hope that I will be able to be in person at the future ICANN conference. I was hoping to be there in May this year, but was unable to because of the travel restrictions, so I joined you, as you probably report virtually. Of course, I'm disappointed with the latest coronavirus variant that we all became aware of on Thursday last week. Meant that I had to pause my. You're a leading professional accountancy organisation. And I wish you all safe.
Oh, yes, that's the #1 accountant in the whole wide world, the IFAC president, addressing at the EFCC. And I can assure our listeners that we are going to have a part 2. Time has not permitted us to go on to discuss some of the questions you have. So stay tuned and tell your friends we are going to come back. Our next episode is going to be on Thursday, December 16, 2021, 6 p.m. West African time, and it's going to be online. Please go to any of the ICANN mediums on social media and like ICANN. The topic we are going to be looking at is sustainability reporting in a Nigerian perspective. There will be guesting Dr. Innocent Okusa, our first Deputy Vice President of ICANN, also a visiting Associate Professor of Accounting at Caleb University in Water, Lagos. Now, let me leave you with this quote. There is a direct correlation between rule of law and investment. GDP grows when there is investment, and investment thrives on the rule of law. End of quote. That is Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President of AFDB. Be the change that you would like to see. I remain yours sincerely, Anchor Akinfatunke. See you next Thursday. Bye for now.